Before she spoke, I had already found the documents on the kitchen table, meticulously arranged between my coffee cup and an untouched avocado, half a signature move of Rebecca's, combining efficiency with subtle resentment. Upon entering, she merely mentioned, "I want a divorce," in a tone as casual as canceling a subscription. I took a leisurely sip from my mug, scrutinized the papers as if they were puzzles, and responded flatly, without a hint of mockery, "That seems acceptable, Rebecca." My expression remained unchanged, leading me to believe that it was at this moment she began to worry, despite her professional composure. She arched an eyebrow, anticipating denial, negotiation, or perhaps a passionate speech on the subject of soulmates and counseling. Instead, I offered her a pen, questioning if I should sign every page or just the final one. It was then that she looked up in surprise. Her mouth slightly opened in bewilderment, as if she'd hit a roadblock in her daydream. Why bother asking? I sat casually in my chair. No, I didn't need to. The truth is, I had suspicions. Not the specifics, but the pattern was wrong. For months, I felt a disturbing undercurrent beneath our routine tranquility. Unfamiliar scents, unmatched expenses, hidden signs in the laundry, all indications of something amiss. Small details, often overlooked, but I don't overlook things. I gather them. So no, I didn't ask why. Instead, I signed one document after another with the same precision I used to manage our finances. Once done, I slid the folder back towards her, as if dismissing a menu. She hesitated for a moment, taken aback, then nodded reluctantly. Well, very well then. She exited the kitchen, thinking she'd won something. Unbeknownst to her, she was walking into a trap she herself had built. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. Rebecca, as expected, didn't cease from seeking an audience. Her affinity for the limelight isn't rooted in bitterness, but rather biology at this stage. Hence, it came as no shock when, 3 days post-divorce, she organized her "Woe is Me" brunch with her circle of confidants. Among them were Amanda, perpetually divorced and a connoisseur of fine wines; Kelly, notorious for her inability to keep secrets, even if they were etched onto her eyelids; and Heather, Rebecca's oldest friend, who might have been the only one in the room recalling Rebecca's appearance before Botox and Instagram filters. They convened at that extravagant downtown spot known for its overpriced beet salad and fake rustic decor. I was aware of their gathering due to Amanda's Instagram story featuring a tower of mimosas, akin to a crime scene. I quietly folded my gym clothes into duffel bags while watching, my smile deepening at Rebecca's swift transformation from wife to story. She leaned in dramatically, her oversized sunglasses resting like protective gear on her face, and declared with just the right tremble, "He didn't even attempt to salvage our marriage." 19 years, and he merely smiled, sighed, and walked away. Amanda grasped her chest as if struck, mirroring a flatlined mimosa. "Is this true?" He remained silent. Rebecca nodded slowly, protracting the moment. Not a single question, not even a why. It felt like I was an outsider. Kelly predictably erupted into a Lifetime movie-style drama. That's sociopathic. Bex, like stone cold. Who does that? Heather didn't speak much, merely stirring her straw through the melting ice in her glass, squinting more than usual. I had always suspected that beneath all her curated neutrality, Heather harbored a brain. From the angle at which she tilted her head while Rebecca continued talking, it was clear she sensed something burning beneath all the drama. The surprising thing about Rebecca was that she tried to cash in on sympathy prematurely. Sympathy is valuable, and she attempted to trade it too soon. Divorce can be chaotic, loud, and painful. But when the person you left doesn't react violently or plead to stay, instead disappearing like fog under sunlight, people become suspicious. Rumors circulate. Perhaps it wasn't that straightforward. Maybe there was more. At the same time, I was navigating my own silent departure. No fanfare, no dramatic goodbyes, just calculated and cold departures. I didn't take everything. Only what belonged to me: items I bought, items I worked for, items with sentimental value. I left the false antique mirror she claimed symbolized us. I also left the book she never read, the Lou Creuset pot we received as a wedding gift and used only twice. However, I kept the handwritten note she once placed in my briefcase on our third anniversary before her gaze shifted towards other people's reflections. She didn't keep it out of nostalgia, but for potential future use. Rebecca observed the house becoming vacant day by day, as if she hadn't noticed an hourglass getting flipped. With each return from yoga or casual networking dinners, another closet resounded empty. No communication, no conflict, no let's talk, these were all absent. She assumed I'd disintegrate without her influence. She failed to recognize that I had already escaped her pull. At the end of the second week, I was gone. There was no argument, no dramatic goodbye, no tearful voicemail with background piano music. Just an emptiness clean and surgical. I changed my phone number, deleted social media accounts, and redirected mail to a private box without my name. The bills for the house, now hers, were silently transferred to her account. Even my Spotify stopped playing in the kitchen speakers. It was as if I had been digitally removed, bit by bit, from the canvas of our marriage. This is what truly hurt her. The divorce wasn't the torment, neither was the quietude. It was the anonymity that pierced her soul. She anticipated sorrow, fury, late-night tipsy messages, perhaps a melodramatic plea to a friend for dialogue. Instead, she received nothingness, not the serenity one associates with it, but power. I relocated to a modern apartment overlooking the lake in Bellevue, residing on the top floor, furnished sparsely as preferred. The type of dwelling where doors whisper shut contentedly, where no one acknowledges your existence or cares about your plight. The concierge wisely refrained from providing unit numbers to hysterical women clad in Lululemon attire claiming, "I'm his wife." She made the attempt, oh, she did try. She called my workplace, allegedly for updates. However, she learned that I had switched to remote work and signed a new consulting deal with another company. She contacted my former gym associates, but they were not true companions, merely supportive spectators and growlers who knew me as Dan. Even her mother was contacted, an action that must have been her last resort because Rebecca detested her. Perhaps if you had cared for him as deeply as your affection towards your Pilates instructor, he wouldn't have disappeared, her mother suggested, quoting exactly. That remark must have been painful for Rebecca, given her knack for managing social spheres like a chessboard. She was always the one manipulating narratives, often presenting herself as the wronged or misunderstood party. However, it's challenging to guide a narrative when the other character chooses to leave the storyline. She initiated a text message. "Rebecca, hello, just pondering if we can perhaps discuss. I feel this is happening too rapidly." But she received no response. She then tried again. "Rebecca, could we at least agree on what we're telling others? It's confusing for our hypothetical children, for our friends." Yet, there was still silence. We didn't have kids, but it seemed she thought mentioning the term would hurt more. Then came an email with closure in the subject line. She chose not to open it, merely archiving it instead. There is a unique form of power in restraint. It's not retaliation, it's self-control. Imagining her walking around the house, opening drawers, checking closets, wondering if she had left anything behind, a note, a post-it, even a pair of socks to throw dramatically to the floor. But there was nothing, not even a trace of my scent. It was then that the silence began to haunt her. For silence can grow louder than screams. It starts to make you doubt your recollections. It begins to nibble at the borders of your memory. And that's precisely where I wanted her, unsettled, not enraged, not heartbroken, but troubled. Heather did not bring it up immediately. She waited. That was her way, letting things stew. But eventually, her curiosity overpowered her. Or perhaps she simply wanted to see Rebecca squirm. It was during a leisurely Saturday lunch, Rebecca halfway through a kale Caesar and 2 glasses into a crisp Chardonnay, when Heather idly stirred her straw and said, "So, I believe I saw Daniel last week." Rebecca's fork halted mid-stab. "Where is it?" Heather shrugged. "Carefully and thoughtfully. Empty can." Rebecca scoffed. "Oh, come on. Daniel detests such places. The man believes anything that involves a sommelier is a hoax." "Right," Heather replied, her eyes narrowing. That's what I assumed too. But it was him. White button-down shirt. New watch. He looked good, better than I had ever seen him. Rebecca struggled to laugh, but it got stuck in her throat. Was he alone? Then Heather hesitated, and Rebecca felt it. A subtle shift in the atmosphere. The moment before you find out something you're not prepared to hear. No, Heather said softly. He wasn't alone. Rebecca leaned back in her chair too hastily, spilling her wine. Who was it? She didn't know. I don't know, Heather continued, stunning. The quiet, expensive kind of stunning. Long dark hair, navy dress, pearl earrings. They were seated in the corner booth, drinking red wine. Laughing they were. Rebecca repeated softly, her voice brittle. Heather nodded, and she touched his wrist when he stood up. Rebecca's lips tightened as she spoke. You must have misunderstood. Daniel wouldn't do something like that. However, I wasn't mistaken. Heather delved into her bag as if searching for gum, but instead produced her phone. A few taps later, she displayed the screen on the table, her voice apologetic yet decisive. I hadn't intended to show you this, but I thought, you should see. Rebecca scrutinized the image. It was neither staged nor clear, yet there he was, Daniel in profile, smiling in a way she hadn't seen for years. His posture was relaxed, his chin tilted subtly, giving an impression of genuine presence and life. The woman beside him had her hand on his wrist, and even in the blurry snapshot, it was evident she wasn't attempting to impress him. She already had. Rebecca's expression remained unchanged initially. He returned the phone with the same coldness she used to feign climaxes, detached and altered. But Heather kept her gaze on Rebecca's eyes, not her mouth. Rebecca's eyes flickered momentarily. He never told me he was dating someone, Rebecca murmured, swirling her now heated wine. You're divorced, Heather said sympathetically. He doesn't have to. Rebecca remained silent, gazing past Heather, beyond the window, at the pair walking their golden retriever across the street. They appeared unbearably tranquil. Within her stirred a fissure, neither agony nor sorrow. It was something more acrid, more mature, a taste she'd suppressed for years. Envy, and she detested it. For Daniel wasn't meant to depart with dignity. He was supposed to become mundane, perhaps date an unexceptional partner, put on weight, and discuss craft beer and gardening. But this, fancy restaurants, costly timepieces, and women who caressed his wrist as if it held significance. That wasn't the narrative she had penned, and for the first time it struck her. Perhaps I didn't understand Daniel at all, or even worse, maybe I never did. She convinced herself it was merely a detour. It began casually. Rebecca departed her book club prematurely, growing weary of another discourse about emotional work and rediscovering one's midlife purpose. She inserted a haphazard podcast into the stereo and drove aimlessly. No destination, simply movement. Yet, it seemed her tires had premonitions before she did. 30 minutes elapsed, and she found herself on a serene, tree-lined Bellevue street, halting before an elegant glass and steel skyscraper with understated signage that hinted at affluence. The lookout point. She disliked the pompous connotation, and she detested even more the indifference of the valet as her Lexus drew up diagonally across the road, ceasing its engine. For some time, she remained stationary, feigning absorption in her phone. However, her gaze persistently wandered to the 8th floor, where soft golden lights blurred against navy drapes, casting subtle gleams on the expansive windows. Then she noticed them. Shadows. Two of them. One was undeniably Daniel, with his broad shoulders and hands tucked away in his pockets, moving slowly as he contemplated issues, much like before. As for the other, it seemed to be the woman from the photograph, her hair neatly twisted, a wine glass grasped loosely in one hand, her posture immaculate, even bathed in shadow. Rebecca stood transfixed. The woman slightly adjusted her position, leaning into Daniel's vicinity as he spoke, her head tilted back in a laugh that Rebecca hadn't heard echo in their home for over a decade. It was then the sickness set in, not just because he had moved on, but because it was agony. There was elegance in the room, an intimacy, one not born from transient affairs or petty retribution, but something deeper, more profound, like a tree that had been planted long before one even noticed the soil. Rebecca found herself stooping in her seat, taking shallow breaths through her nose, her hand clenched tightly around the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. Who was this stranger? The wine glass, the gesture, the poise, all of it hinted at a mysterious identity. She wasn't merely a young secretary or fitness instructor seeking a divorced man with a substantial retirement fund. This woman exuded presence, not needing to fill the space around her. Instead, she claimed it just by standing there. Rebecca checked her reflection in the mirror, weary eyes staring back at her, makeup smeared from the day, lipstick worn, roots visible under her neatly tucked blouse. The once crisp and fitted garment now sagged subtly from the seat belt crease. It struck her suddenly, like a cruel, gradual revelation. She no longer resembled the woman Daniel would be attracted to. Not anymore, not against her. She remained there for nearly 20 minutes, watching figures move within that radiant room. Watching Daniel pour more wine, pull out a chair, laugh again. And not once, not even once, did he glance toward the window. He didn't know she was there. But it hurt worse. He didn't seem to care. She managed 3 more days before giving in. For 3 nights, she clung to her phone, feigning indifference while secretly fixating on Daniel's LinkedIn updates, examining tagged photographs, and scrutinizing floor plans of the building where the purge took place to determine which apartment faced the lake. These days were spent attempting to maintain her meticulously crafted life pilates, skincare routines, networking lunches, all while the growing silence strained her mental stability like a taut rubber band. Eventually, she succumbed to what she had vowed never to do. At 11:42 p.m., wrapped in a constricting robe and with a perspiring Chardonnay glass on the marble nightstand, she reopened their old text conversation, the one permanently positioned at the top of her messages, and typed, "Let's chat, Rebecca and Daniel." She hesitated over the screen, reread it multiple times, removed the question mark, then replaced it. Her thumb trembled as she hit send. The typing indicator remained inactive for nearly 5 minutes before her doubts about a response surfaced. Then it arrived. "Daniel, what remains undiscussed?" The tone was cold, devoid of any warmth or consideration. Rebecca fixed her gaze on the screen as the heaviness in her chest solidified into stone. She reread it, hoping for some semblance of kindness. But there was none. It merely sat there. What remains undiscussed? It wasn't hostile. That's what made it more painful. It was disregard. She had anticipated anger, sarcastic remarks, even guilt trips. But this clinical detachment, it was like shouting into a void. There was no leverage, no feelings to manipulate. Just a barrier. She remained silent. There was nothing she could say that wouldn't seem pitiful. Instead, she looked at their conversation history, 19 years of shared existence condensed into this bare digital line. Planned trips, listed groceries, shared jokes, emojis, late night, I love yous. All these leading to the last statement, what's left to say? For the first time, she acknowledged that the conversation had finished much earlier than their upcoming divorce. She merely hadn't noticed. Daniel had ceased talking long ago. She simply filled the silence with her own words, believing it was a dialogue. She turned her phone screen down, yet the light seeped through the fabric of the pillow. Rebecca lay there in the dark, shallow breaths, open eyes. And outside, somewhere across the lake, a window glowed warm against the profound blue. But it wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to someone else. It was raining in Seattle, as if the city were reprimanding her, quiet, persistent, like it was reminding her of all her past mistakes. Rebecca sat in her car parked outside the purge for a full 11 minutes, engine on, wipers clicking a slow, worried rhythm. She wore no makeup. Her hair was tied loosely. There was no armor, no script, just instinct and urgency. She convinced herself it was insignificant. She merely wished to converse, to dispel doubts, perhaps rekindle something. Yet, as she ventured beneath the shelter, drenched and breathless, she admitted her thoughts hadn't progressed past the foyer. The concierge barely lifted his gaze. "Name," he said, prompting her. "Rebecca Alden," was her response, challenging him to respond. "I'm here to see Daniel Alden." His brief pause echoed profoundly. A subtle, polite hesitation, as if the air had been evacuated from the room. He struck a few keys. "Mr. Alden didn't register any visitors tonight," he said, adding, "I am his wife." The man raised his eyes then. His countenance offered no hints. She detected a fleeting glimpse of something in his expression, not condemnation per se, but rather a faint trace of recognition that people experience when they recognize someone who's already suffered loss. "I'll phone him," he said, followed by a prolonged silence, the kind that makes one's skin shudder. She envisioned Daniel standing in his sparsely decorated living room, perhaps barefoot, perhaps clutching an expensive drink, as her name flashed across his screen. She visualized him releasing breath gradually, considering something intangible in his hand. "Then," he instructed, "you may ascend. Elevator 3. Windhouse level." Her heart pulsated against her ribs. The ascent seemed to last longer than it truly did. The lift remained quiet except for the rain trickling down its glass walls. Beneath her lay Bellevue, and she saw her reflection dripping wet, eyes large, complexion pallid. For a brief moment, she failed to identify herself. She exited into a hallway resembling an art gallery instead of a residence. Warm wood, soft lights, silence so heavy it muffled her thoughts. His door was already slightly ajar. She nudged it open. First, the aroma struck her, not Daniel's cologne or aftershave, but something more luxurious: amber, sandalwood, a subtle whiff of wine. In the background, soft music played, Chet Baker, relaxed and fitting. And there he was. Daniel stood near the open kitchen, facing away, filling a glass with red wine. He didn't seem startled, made no attempt to approach her. She briefly looked over her shoulder and commented, "You seem damp." Uncertain if invited, she approached. "It's raining outside." Daniel offered a towel, neither warm nor cold, merely dry. This simple act affected her more than any shouting ever did. She surveyed the room. It was exquisite, subtly elegant, carefully designed. Each item had its place, nothing superfluous, no mess, not even herself. Opening her mouth to speak, she hesitated with a quiet sigh mirrored in the glass balcony door. A woman's shadow, seated on the couch beyond view, one leg elegantly crossed over the other, engrossed in a book. Rebecca halted. Daniel observed. Dinner was almost ready. It wasn't said unkindly. It wasn't insincere. Just truthful. Rebecca stood in his entryway, wet, diminutive, and suddenly conscious of each decision she had made in the last year. Her hand gripped the towel as if it were a life preserver. Daniel returned to his wine, and for a moment she perceived something unsettling in his expression. Tranquility. She had definitively left behind the past. Yet, there she stood in a life devoid of an empty space once occupied by Rebecca. With two cautious steps, she entered the living room, uncertain whether to embrace or evade the palpable tension. Her heels tapped lightly on the polished floor, each sound echoing as a blunder. The apartment was dim, yet it exuded intentionality, soft lighting casting amber shadows, and the faintest hum of jazz wafting through the air. Then she noticed her, the woman sitting gracefully at the edge of the slate-gray couch, legs crossed like a paused ballerina, dress unfolded without a crease despite being seated. She cradled a crystal glass of red wine in one hand, while the other hand lay tenderly against her cheek as she turned to gaze at Rebecca with polite, detached interest. There was something recognizable about her. Bones that defied aging, a quiet self-assurance that wealth cannot buy and yoga cannot feign. The pit of Rebecca's stomach churned, but her mind could not pinpoint the reason. A fleeting recollection glimmered just beyond grasp. Daniel moved between them, composed as a surgeon. He filled another glass of wine with the same meticulous grace he employed to mend cabinet hinges, steady, measured, utterly untroubled. He extended the drink to the woman, not to Rebecca. Then, casting a glance at Rebecca, he said, "Pardon, we've already begun." His words were not hostile, not derisive, just firm, conclusive, as if she was interrupting a meeting, as if she had accidentally intruded upon someone else's gathering. Rebecca hesitated, struggling to form a response. She was still attempting to decipher the woman's expression, still striving to comprehend why a part of her mind whispered, "I recognize you," while the rest screamed, "Depart." Daniel seated himself next to the woman with casual familiarity. He didn't place his arm around her. He needn't have. The intimacy was palpable in the silence between them, understated, quiet, a testament to their practiced bond. This wasn't unusual. This wasn't a rebound. This was genuine. Suddenly, Rebecca found her damp garments sticking to her body, her hair frantically spreading at the edges. Mascara streaked under her eyes. She seemed like a remnant of the past, a spectral figure unaware she was already deceased. Turning to Daniel, she reached for whatever was available, even mockery. "You don't waste time," he retorted, sipping his wine. "You did." Rebecca arched an eyebrow at his statement, finding amusement rather than cruelty, more like observing a play with unexpected dialogue. A burning sensation spread through her throat. I, I had hoped we could discuss something," she whispered, her voice shrinking. Daniel placed his glass down. "We did," he replied, "the day you handed me the documents." Embarrassment rose to her neck, creeping up towards her ears like a flame. There was no shouting, no recriminations, just this unbearable composure. He wasn't chastising her. He had already disregarded her. The sophisticated woman glanced between them, then leaned slightly towards Daniel. "Have I caught you at a good time?" Rebecca recognized the tone then. A memory sparked. University. A dorm party. Shared major. A minor, unimportant act of deceit that Rebecca had dismissed as insignificant. A girl she had considered forgettable when she encroached on one of Rebecca's past romantic interests. What was her name? Margaret? Morgan? No, Monica. Suddenly, Rebecca recalled precisely who this woman was. But Daniel remained silent, and his quietness spoke volumes. Her past had re-entered her life, and she was no longer the central figure in it. Rebecca stood there like a piece of art with an uncertain placement, too precious to discard, too uncomfortable to display. Her voice emerged thinner than anticipated, tinged with surprise she hadn't acknowledged until now. "You've already moved on," she inquired, the question sounding more childish than intended, like discovering someone opening presents before Christmas morning. Daniel didn't sigh, didn't scoff. He subtly tilted his head while keeping his brow unfurrowed, seeming to consider the atmosphere. "You made your decision swiftly," he remarked, twirling his wine glass. "I acknowledged your choice." There was no hint of animosity in his tone. That's what made it excruciating. He didn't intend to wound her. He wasn't trying, period. The words simply existed, like entries in a textbook. "Rebecca," she verified, now convinced. It was Monica. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her eyes reflecting genuine perplexity. "Who is this?" Rebecca hesitated, her name stuck in her throat like dust on aged fabric. Daniel didn't hasten to respond. He took another sip of wine, leaned back, and casually mentioned, without meeting her gaze, "This is Rebecca, my former spouse." Monica subtly arched an eyebrow, not out of shock, not with disapproval. Astonishment, as if informed someone had been removed from the guest list unexpectedly, yet still encountering them at the door. "Oh," she murmured gently, "I hadn't realized." Rebecca winced. It wasn't Monica's words that caused the discomfort, but her delivery. There was a sense of poise, an objective detachment, as if her presence there was an unforeseen complication in what had previously been a serene evening. The room seemed to engulf her. She had come armed with apprehension and lingering questions, hoping, perhaps, that he would confront her, weep, or call her aside. Instead, he was awake, eating, laughing, living without her. And there was more. She had been so effortlessly replaced, it made their marriage seem fictitious. Rebecca's voice returned in a hushed tone. "She doesn't even recognize me." Daniel turned his gaze to her once more, his expression unrevealing. "That isn't her fault." And there it was. Not anger, not cruelty, just the truth. Rebecca retreated gradually, towel in hand, symbolizing her lingering connection to this place that no longer acknowledged her existence. She was insignificant now, a mere side note, a plot point already resolved. All she could do was observe as Daniel resumed his conversation with Monica, as effortlessly as flipping a page after a minor fold. She'd come hoping to provoke feelings sorrow, remorse, longing. But instead, she confirmed her deepest fear: she held no significance anymore. Rebecca, wet and diminutive, stood rooted in the doorway, disintegrating bit by bit, no longer fitting into a space that barely accommodated her shadow. Rebecca had returned to her book. Daniel had resumed his wine. The tranquil silence between them, steeped in familiarity, made Rebecca feel like an erased memory from a distant past. Her voice quivered before she even registered speaking. "Did you?" she whispered, almost childlike. Not threatening, not probing, just seeking confirmation. "Did you ever truly love me?" Unadorned, unmasked doubt, as if questioning could reverse time or mend something ripped beyond repair. Daniel remained silent initially. He merely gazed at her, not maliciously, not with resentment, with recollection, and that was more painful. He placed his wine glass down gently, the way one handles cherished items. Then he slightly straightened, rested a hand softly on his knee, and spoke, his voice low and measured. "I did. I loved you profoundly. Every day, even when it seemed challenging. Even when I felt insignificant in rooms you wished to outgrow." Rebecca blinked rapidly, tears threatening at the edges of her eyes. Daniel whispered softer now. "You ceased loving us. That term. Us. Not me and you. Us." As if their marriage was a third entity in the room, something that required nurturing, attention, care. And she allowed it to wither, watching it shrivel between her and Daniel like a neglected houseplant. She blamed him for neglecting. Rebecca hesitated, unable to produce an apology. No counter-argument or defense came forth. What could she possibly say? She was occupied. She hadn't realized that each time she told him to move on, she made him feel like an inconvenience. There was no playbook for this predicament, only the dull throb of a door shut tight, its lock unnoticed. Daniel rose, not to escort her out, but perhaps to stretch or indicate that their discussion had concluded. He appeared neither angry nor accusatory, but resolved. Rebecca didn't glance his way again. She simply continued reading. The lamp next to her cast a warm glow on her book and the edge of Daniel's shoulder, as if the universe were underscoring the crucial part of this narrative. Rebecca turned gradually, still clutching the towel like an absent excuse, and walked towards the door. No one accompanied her, and no one impeded her. Daniel's words lingered behind her, not as venom, not as accusation, but as a verdict. The corridor felt chillier than recalled, perhaps a mirage of her emotions. Rebecca exited without glancing back, her feet cold in heels she now regretted wearing. Her hand hesitated on the doorframe for mere moments, as if hoping for leniency or an extension of time. Neither occurred. The door closed with a gentle click, symbolizing finality. No echoing footsteps pursued, no voice called out her name, no last-minute declarations to reconsider. Instead, only the hum of the elevator and a fading jazz melody reverberated through the walls. With a heavy heart that belied her stoicism, she summoned the elevator, feeling a sense of finality that seemed to have already settled in. She didn't sob then, not because she lacked the desire, but because there was no space left for it. Grief had transformed into something less noisy, perhaps shame or regret. Instead of mere reverberations of decisions presumed to be rectified in future moments, she found herself haunted by past choices revealed in an empty elevator. As the doors parted, she turned instinctively, not with anticipation. Daniel was unchanged, static. His departure transpired without her presence tonight, executed subtly and quietly, void of the explosive spectacles she once employed as a weapon. No shouting, no chaos, just gradual detachment, similar to observing mist vanish from a tranquil lake. The descent was interminable. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored surfaces, dripping hair, smudged mascara, visage etched with a type of fatigue that no skincare regimen could alleviate. She bore little resemblance to the woman who presented him with divorce documents 5 weeks prior, wearing a self-assured smile and a premeditated speech about craving independence. Instead, she mirrored someone who truly grasped the essence of separation. In the deserted lobby, the concierge gave her a cursory glance, but remained silent. Once nodded politely, akin to closing a file silently. The rain persisted outside, and Rebecca ventured forth without a thought for her umbrella. Upstairs on the 8th floor, Daniel filled another glass with wine, settled beside Monica, and breathed out. It wasn't a victorious or dramatic breath, simply a complete one. He neither glanced at his phone nor watched her departure through the glass. Instead, he resumed their conversation as if nothing had disturbed it. The house felt more resonant now, not from sound, but from vacancy. The absence of Daniel's usual footsteps echoed in the hallway. The silence replaced his coughing fits heard when he read late, and the void beside her in bed was no longer metaphorical. It carried weight and substance. Rebecca aimlessly scrolled through something, her mind devoid of focus. Her phone's blue light cast a weary pallor on her face as she mindlessly swiped through feeds without truly seeing them: influencer posts, sponsored ads, updates from acquaintances celebrating birthdays or showcasing pets. Her actions were now instinctive, while her thoughts lingered elsewhere, stuck in a loop, tormented by words she couldn't erase. You made a swift decision. I respected your choice. She wasn't consciously searching for something until she found it. It was hidden between a beach picture and a dimly lit sushi platter, shared by someone she hadn't communicated with in years. Monica. The Monica. Her profile radiated sophistication, unadorned yet refined elegance. A woman who didn't require noise to capture attention. In her profile picture, it was there. The photograph. A soft, golden hour snap. Daniel and Monica sitting at an outdoor table, sipping wine, genuinely smiling, not staged, not for show. The kind of smile that wasn't orchestrated. The kind that sprang from genuine contentment. Daniel's hand was gently placed on hers. Her nails were the same delicate pink they used to be in our shared apartment. Rebecca gasped, memories flooding back. Monica Prescott, from ethics seminar during junior year. Friendly, kind, helpful study partner. Rebecca, intoxicated by the thrill of being the center, had belittled her, lied, and flirted with a guy Monica cared for. Monica switched majors, changed dorms, vanished all in a few weeks. For years, Rebecca hadn't thought about her. Until now, until Daniel's life was touched by Monica again, like an understated reprimand. Rebecca clicked the photo, a subtle message. Sometimes happiness starts where desperation ends, she wrote, barely audible. No labels, no trendy symbols, just the truth. Rebecca fixed her gaze on the screen until her eyes stung, then placed it face down on the nightstand. She didn't weep, not because she wasn't hurt, but because even her pain seemed too belated now. Sorrow was for things that might return. What she felt now was a chill, final. The house groaned around her, as if recalling him. Each room, every wall, bore traces of the man she had thought would last forever. Now he belonged to someone else, someone who remembered him, someone who forgave him, someone who loved him back before it was too late. Rebecca sank into the bed, realizing how insignificant she felt within it, not in size, but in essence. It was as if the world had moved on without her, leaving only the void created by choosing the wrong moment to cease loving. The rain murmured outside, her phone remained unresponsive, and for the first time since this started, she comprehended what she had lost: not just Daniel, but the self that could have been worthy of him.